Hello, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here today. I'm going to get going. This is being live streamed on Facebook right now, and as well as being recorded on Zoom, and we post all of the recordings to YouTube afterwards. But welcome to everyone watching on Facebook Live and on Zoom here with us today on this Friday. My name is Naomi Grunditz. I'm an aide for Councilwoman Sandoval, District 1. And this is a series that we host most last Fridays of every month. That's an opportunity for constituents, people to connect directly on different planning topics with planning staff and with us in the council office. And today we are really excited to be hosting Eugene Howard, who is the planner leading the West Area Plan. We're also really excited to have Council President Torres on this meeting as well, and her staff. And just a few overview of how today's going to go. We're going to have just some comments, a welcome from Council President Torres, and then we're going to have a presentation from Eugene on what the West Area Plan is, if you're unfamiliar with it, but more where in the timeline it is, and what to expect. And then we're going to leave the majority of the rest of the time open for questions and answers. So that's how we like to do these. It's meant to be pretty informal. It's meant to be a conversation. You'll notice we have this sort of set up as a meeting, so you can have your cameras on. It usually ends up being a pretty kind of small, intimate group. So you can raise your hand afterwards if you're joining us in Zoom, and we can unmute you and you can ask your questions. You can also, if you're watching on Facebook Live, feel free to put questions during the presentation at any time into the chat, and I will be monitoring those and I'll queue them up as the moderator later. Also, if you're in Zoom, you're welcome to put questions into the chat there. And I don't see anybody who is calling in via phone today, but if I do see anybody join later, we'll go over the instructions on how to participate with phone controls. So with that, thanks again so much for coming, and I'm going to pass this over to Council President Jamie Torres.
Thanks, Naomi, and hi, everybody. It's really nice to be here. Ask a Planner has been one of the enviable things that Councilwoman Sandoval has been able to host, both with her knowledge and Naomi's knowledge. So just really happy to be here with you all to talk about the West Area Plan, which has been in process since 2019 when I started. And there are 3 council districts that the West Area Plan covers. Councilwoman Sandoval's District 1, my District 3, and Councilman Clark's District 7. So Eugene has been kind of our leader, our guide, and all the neighbors who make up the steering committee of this area plan, really kind of guiding through what are the recommendations we've been hearing from residents through surveys and focus groups and forums about what the next plan will look like. So you might remember your neighborhood probably got its own unique neighborhood plan in the past. Some of my neighborhood plans, like Barnum, go back as far as early 1980s, and they hadn't been updated since then. And these are plans that we refer to when we're doing rezoning decisions of, is it in compliance with what neighbors said they wanted in their neighborhood plan? So it's kind of hard today in 2022 to base a decision off of what a neighborhood plan created in 1982 or 1983 might have said for an entire community. So it's a great opportunity for us to update these plans, and now they're doing it as groupings. So these 5 neighborhoods are all grouped together to, 6 neighborhoods, all grouped together to create a new area plan. And what does that include? It includes things like tree canopy expectations, mobility and transportation, quality of life improvements, parks and open space. And this gives kind of marching orders to the city and to future development. This is what we want in our neighborhood. This is what we want to see for the next 20 years in development. This is your guide. And so the city's about to release a public draft, and it's a draft because it can still change. We want input. We want feedback. We want to know if we're in the right direction for what you want for your neighborhood, but not just your neighborhood, for the neighborhood next to you, for the areas that make the neighborhoods that make up this whole area. So this includes West Colfax, Sun Valley, Villa Park, Valverde, Barnum, and Barnum West. Other areas are getting planned as we speak. Community Planning and Development has other area plans underway and more coming. But this is ours, and this is where kind of we stand right now. And it's been a labor of love for a lot of community members who have been engaged since 2019. So really thankful to them and the commitment that they've made to really trying to get good input and good feedback presented to you in this public draft. So thank you so much. Excuse me. Thank you so much to Eugene, to Councilwoman Sandoval's office, Councilman Clark's office for all the engagement and dedication. And I can't wait to see what folks think and what the next steps are.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Council President Torres. So again, my name is Eugene Howard. I am the project manager for the West Area Plan. I'm going to try to go through this presentation fairly quickly. So definitely take notes or put questions in the chat, whether it's Facebook Live or the Zoom platform, and would be happy to address those questions, or if need be, go back to some material just to make sure that you all feel comfortable with what's being covered today. So this is the agenda for our presentation this morning. I'm going to give a brief overview just in case this is new information or maybe one of your first times joining us. I'll go over some of the content that is currently in the working draft, share with you how we've been soliciting input and feedback on that draft, some of the key themes that we've been hearing from community members on how we can make the plan a little bit maybe easier to use or to read, how we might be able to tighten it up and really have it be a true reflection of the needs of the 6 neighborhoods and the community members in those neighborhoods from now, 2022, and not the 1980s, because we all know Denver has changed quite a bit since that time, and really even in the last few years. And so we really want to make sure that as we look forward as a city, we are reflecting the values that are important to all of the residents in West Denver and how we can couple those with the vision and the aspirations of our entire city. So hopefully you'll get a glimpse of that work today and look for ways that you can participate in this process. So I'll conclude with some next steps and open this platform up for questions and answers. So quickly, Council President has covered this, but again, this is where we are focused currently with our efforts. These colorful groupings of neighborhoods are the planning areas. The West happens to be our 4th plan currently underway. We have other plans underway in the near southeast and then the near northwest. So those are 2 other plans that are active at this time. To give you a quick overview of our timeline, we have been really working hard really since the fall of 2019. I won't go into great detail over this particular slide, but it's really meant to show how we have worked to engage the community at different touch points, different milestones, the opportunities that we've had to partner with other organizations in West, like the West Denver Renaissance Collaborative and Colorado Jobs with Justice. Really trying to make sure that we are getting a variety of views and a variety of needs and issues highlighted and raised to us through not just how the city looks at planning and efforts for West, but how our partners and how nonprofit organizations who are there doing work every single day, how we can help support their missions and their work as well. So lots of partnerships, lots of points of engagement, even during the last 1.5 to 2 years where we had to be very creative in how we reached out and solicited input during COVID. But we really feel strongly that we did a lot of engagement. We, of course, can always do more, and we'll be doing so. And I'll show you a bit of that as we go through this presentation. So just as a reminder for those who may not be with us in planning on a day-to-day basis, really our neighborhood plans are rooted in the foundation of our citywide plans and policies. So one of our most important plans at the citywide level is Blueprint Denver. And in 2018, we updated Blueprint Denver. And you can see, for those of you who are participating online, can see that we've got 6 key vision elements that really help guide and direct the work that we do at the city. So we really are invested in making sure that our neighborhoods are equitable, affordable, and inclusive. And boy, that can be very challenging in today's environment, but it is really important to us that we do what we can to really support that value at the citywide level and within our neighborhoods. It's important to us to have strong and authentic neighborhoods, neighborhoods that are safe and connected, whether you are in a car, on a bike, and perhaps you use an assistant mobility device. No matter how you get around in our city, it's so important that our pedestrians and our bicyclists and our transit users all feel safe and comfortable navigating through their neighborhoods and to their key destinations. It's really important for us to have policies that help hold up our small business community and help our mom and pop locations, as well as our national larger employers. So we really look for opportunities to balance all the opportunities for all of our employers and our employee base. Of course, the environment is really important to us. We've all sort of seen what's been going on in the last few years with our weather. So looking for ways that we can help promote a safe and healthy environment, as well as our sort of built environment that we can support is key. And you'll see evidence of that as I continue. And then, of course, we want everyone to be as healthy and active in this wonderful state that so many of us call home. In addition to that, we also, it's important for us to really look for opportunities to create ways for you, the citizens, to engage and have access to opportunities that are meaningful to you. Looking for ways to reduce vulnerability to involuntary displacement. And of course, looking for ways that we can expand our housing choices, our housing options, whether you are a senior on a fixed income or a brand new first-time home buyer. We really want to make sure that we are doing what we can to encourage a variety of different housing types so that folks can stay in our community and in our city. And then lastly on this topic, all of this work is really meant to create what we refer to as complete communities. So no matter how you choose to get around in your neighborhood, how you choose to work and recreate and socialize, we really want to make sure that all of our efforts are creating as complete of communities as we are capable of doing here in the city. So I'm going to now go through some of the content areas. Again, I won't touch on all of these, but to give you a sense of how this draft for the West neighborhoods is laid out. We heard pretty clearly from our stakeholders that no matter what we do in this document, it's so important that we highlight and hold up the overall aspirations and visions for a healthy and vibrant quality of life. And quality of life is a big topic. It can cover a variety of different subtopics, as you can see here displayed on the screen. So everything from individual health, health of our environment, the natural environment, health of our waterways and our natural systems, making sure that we're doing what we can to promote our parks and open spaces and trails, because these are really important assets to the West neighborhoods that don't always exist in other parts of the community, so of Denver. So we really want to make sure that we hold on and highlight and take care of these natural jewels that we have. Food is important. Really making sure that we are doing what we can to promote an individual's overall sense of health and safety. We have great pet ownership in West, so we want to make sure that we highlight ways that individuals with their four-legged family members can keep them involved and safe and healthy as well. And then looking for ways that we can promote community. Another key section and broad topic that is broken down into categories is mobility. So really understanding some of the challenges that our residents face, and then looking for the tools, the policies, and the techniques that we can do to really move our city towards our future vision where we have zero fatalities and zero issues with individuals experiencing conflicts with cars. So our Vision Zero, which is really trying to get us to zero major conflicts by 2030, is a part of the work that is underlying this section. And so we are looking for ways to classify our streets and really have what we refer to as modal priorities. So a street that is really meant to take care of our pedestrians, and one that maybe is more about transit, one that's maybe geared towards and has a focal point on safe biking. So those are ways that we are looking to try to help our users understand which route, which way, which network is made for them and has them as a priority. We've heard a lot about sidewalks and making sure that our pedestrians have safe and connected ways to get across some of our major thoroughfares in West. Again, our trail system, which many people use not only for recreation, but to get around in our city. And of course, we continue to look to add choice, much like with our housing. We want to add choices for people to choose different ways to get around so that you're not necessarily reliant on your own personal car, but you can use a bike or you can use transit, and it comes and it supports your needs and gets you around in our city. And we are also looking at creative ways to really help encourage transit use. So in larger developments, we are working with those developers to provide those choices, whether it be an e-bike program, which is really kind of hot and exciting right now, or a transit pass, whether it's for rail or bus. So we're just looking at ways to be creative, not only for today, but 15 to 20 years out, as Council President mentioned. Of course, we could not do this kind of work if we didn't talk about land use and zoning and architectural design and our desires for what we refer to as our built environment. And so we really go into detail talking about the nuances of the 6 neighborhoods, looking for places and opportunities where the infrastructure is in place to support additional growth and development, looking for ways to help encourage people to reuse existing homes versus the wholesale sort of replacement, and really looking for opportunities to celebrate the unique sort of built environment, architectural styles, and moments in time that really mark good parts of neighborhoods in West and give them that unique character and nature. And looking for ways to also, again, see where we have these assets that maybe speak to our history and the culture of West, and suggest ways that we might try to capture those places and highlight them and feature them, whether it's through a landmark designation or some tool like that that can really help not only preserve a key and important place in community, but also provide funding mechanisms to help with maintenance and care, so that those jewels that we have in West can continue for the next 100 years. We also have a section devoted to housing and jobs and economy. We have a pretty significant employment base in West, and we really are looking for ways to encourage connections between our West Denver residents and those local employers. So the more that we can encourage local hiring and good paying jobs in the neighborhood, means that maybe you don't have to leave Denver, or you don't have to drive to the other side of town, but you could walk or ride your bike or have your place of employment located close to you in your neighborhood, in your community. Really helps with that sort of community building and that sense of family and camaraderie that we can have with our employers in our neighborhoods, and particularly the opportunities in the West. And so there are ways to look at enhancing and highlighting the economic viability and care, not only for our places, but for our people as well. And we have a section that takes all of these ideas and these policies and these strategies and really looks to show you how we can pull all of these ideas together and have some example projects. So it's not an exhaustive list of all the opportunities and possibilities in West, but knowing that transit is really important to our city for our climate goals, for moving people around as our population continues to grow, we really wanted to focus on the opportunities with transit in West. So we have some examples of how transit projects might be realized in the future. We do the same with our greenway, our natural systems. So the South Platte River, the Weir Gulch, Lakewood Gulch, So we've got these wonderful natural networks. So how can we really show you how we want to embrace these places that are so key and important in West? For so many years in our history as a city and really as a nation, we've turned our backs to our rivers that are in cities or in our creeks that are in our cities. But now there's a whole movement on the national level and even on the international level to recognize these jewels that we have, that people from even before we were a state loved and cared for and were nurtured and supported by these systems. So let's look for ways to bring those back to their health and let them be opportunities and jewels and features in our communities. And with the waterway systems in West, we have an opportunity to demonstrate how this is important in this community and how we can be an example for the other parts of the city and county of Denver. And of course, pedestrian safety and some opportunities that may continue to be realized with the Colfax and Federal intersection. Today, it's a pretty large piece of infrastructure, and there's some conversations taking place with CDOT and between the city and how we might look for ways to bring that infrastructure down to a scale that's a little bit safer and more manageable for people trying to traverse that area, and also bring back some of those natural elements and perhaps even provide opportunities for some growth and development in places that would be less disruptive to existing communities. And then, of course, we've got to talk about our neighborhoods. Over the last 3 years, I've got to meet so many different people and people who have been in the community for generations and folks that have just arrived. And one of the things that we have heard over and over again is just how beautiful and culturally rich the 6 neighborhoods of West Denver are. And so we have a section of this document really devoted to those key nuanced characteristics of each neighborhood. So we can look for those opportunities to celebrate the culture, the history, the architectural styles, some of those natural elements that are unique to West. And so you're probably like, well, Eugene, where can I see this for myself? You can actually see an early working draft of the West Area Plan by visiting our Denver website, denvergov.org West Plan. So if you go to the Denver site, the website, the main one, and then put in West Plan as a search, you'll be presented with our project page. And from there, you can look at the plan, you can go through page by page. You can, we have a way for you to make comments directly on the document that you're viewing on your screen. Separate from that, you can, there's a place where you can fill out and just give us your quick reactions on a comment form. Of course, if you would like to learn more about this planning process and the efforts underway, you can reach out to a planner and schedule time with us one-on-one, or it's time with a planner with your community group or your neighbors. So any way that is convenient for you to reach out and get engaged or caught up on this process, we really want to make ourselves available to do that. And so this is just an example of what you can find when you go and search for our project page. And for those of you who are looking at the screen here towards the bottom third are those ways, those opportunities that you can provide us with feedback. And so we've been working with our steering committee. We've been working with members of the community, getting their impressions on this first draft, really to see where we can make some enhancements and modifications before releasing it to the broader community. And so some of the ideas and some of the feedback that have been shared with us is really looking for ways to really speak to the history of West Denver and link the past development patterns and decisions to some of the existing conditions that exist today, so that when you look at recommendations, you can see how we are looking forward and trying to create new ideas and new thinking for the future of our neighborhoods. So those really speak to the history and some of the opportunities for like increasing our tree canopy, embracing our natural waterways, looking for opportunities to really promote that overall quality of life. We've got some great partners we can work with in the city. And so these are some of the ideas that we are going to be working with to look for those opportunities. Environmental resiliency, which I've just spoken to, is another key component because the West does have these unique characteristics and these great features that we can build upon. So we heard a lot about how can we even push the envelope a little bit more with our green natural waterway areas and open spaces and trails. And so we're going to put our thinking caps on and see how we can even highlight that even more in the next iteration of the document. Of course, mobility and all the great ideas of how and where people see opportunities to enhance our pedestrian safety, places where we can look for ways to create more comfort for individuals who are trying to cross Federal Boulevard, for example, or West Colfax. And ways and places that we might want to make sure that folks really want to get to, whether they are walking or on bikes. So we've got some ideas, and we'll be going back and taking another look at what we refer to as the mobility system and all of these different layers and how they work together to really make sure that we're not only reflecting the needs of today, but also are looking forward to future infrastructure needs and where we can make those connections and investments today. Land use, we've heard a lot about. Council President Torres has even started moving the needle on this with the accessory dwelling units and the legislation that she proposed that allowed portions of her area to even explore the possibility of owning or having or constructing an accessory dwelling unit. So those are ways that we're looking to introduce more housing types and housing choice, different price points, whether it be an accessory dwelling unit behind someone's home for an in-law or a child, returning from college and needing that support for that first kickoff into their lives. Or maybe it's more smaller scale townhomes or garden homes that we see really around the West neighborhood. So we've got a lot of ways and a lot of ideas to continue to support and promote the different thinking and ideas coming around housing, and really looking forward to green building practices. And so that not only are we promoting the needs within our housing and housing choice, but we're doing so in an environmentally responsible way. I kind of touched on some of the housing here, looking at ways to support deeply affordable housing, as well as more choice within market rate housing. Talking and looking at opportunities to partner with our business community to, again, promote that local hiring, making sure that we are providing opportunities for businesses to grow and expand in our retail corridors in West, ways that we can support our small business community, and really look for opportunities to pair our youth with entrepreneurship programs or mentorship programs so that they see a pathway forward with employers that are in their community. Again, creating that sense of camaraderie and that sense that is so key to defining who and what the West residents are for each other. Same thing with the neighborhood chapters. There is some feedback that we received and how we can really talk about some of those key areas within each unique neighborhood. So we're going to take another look at ways that we can continue to promote and enhance that section, and welcome any feedback that you might all have, because you are the subject matter experts for your neighborhoods and for your community. And so with the feedback that we received so far, which those were some of the key themes that I just shared with you, our plan right now is to, and this is myself and a wonderful team of planners that I have working with me on this, because no one can do anything alone. So I've got a great team. I feel very well supported by the community planning and development staff, as well as our council offices and our council leadership. So we're going to see how we can incorporate these great ideas and feedback and really use the month of August to update and revise the current working document. Our hope is to get a new version, a new and enhanced version in front of the steering committee that has been guiding this process on your behalf and with us as partners since October of 2019. And all of that leading to what we hope will be a review draft, maybe mid in September, and then really have that open for your review and your comments through the month of October. And then depending on how close we've gotten to casting that future vision that represents all of you, we hope to begin the official adoption process towards the end of this year. So that is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for giving me this time and this opportunity to share with you. And now I will take a moment to check out the chat and check in with Naomi to see if there are questions that I can address for you. And on the screen is my email address, and it's Eugene, EUGENE .Howard, HOWARD, at denvergov.org. So that's how you can reach me directly. And so with that, I'll see if there are questions.
Thanks so much, Eugene. That was really thorough. And thank you so much for your work throughout the years on this project. So we've had a couple of comments coming in on the Facebook page, but first I want to see if any of our audience has questions on Zoom. If you do, feel free to, if you know how to use the raise hand function, that's usually pretty easy, and then we can just unmute you and you can ask your question. So the raise hand function is under reactions. If you go to your kind of control screen, there's a little happy face with a plus next to it. That's reactions, and there's a button for raise hand. So feel free to do that at any moment, and we can call on you with your question. And if no one wants to jump in, I can start talking a little bit of some questions from the chat or just some comments in general. So I think that there's some comments or some thoughts in the chat about, well, maybe let me tee it up this way. What happens when this plan is passed eventually? So it's being drafted. Eventually, City Council will have to vote on it, right? So there'll be a public hearing and there'll be a vote of all the council members to approve it. What happens after that? What happens when the plan is passed? Is there the things that are laid out, Eugene, that you just talked about, do they start happening? So for example, in the mobility section, you talked about enhancing bike paths and things like that. Are we going to start seeing that work being done when the plan passes? Does the plan approve anything in particular, like a project?
That is a great question, and a question that we often get. So thank you for asking that. The work that we do in community planning and development with our citywide plans and our area plans do really two key things. First and foremost, they are meant to capture the community's aspirations for itself. So we think of it as a roadmap to a future place, a future condition. So where are we starting from today? And what is the vision and dream for the city or the neighborhoods from the residents' perspective? And how do we couple that with policies and projects and needs within the city? So for example, through this process in going out and having conversations and putting surveys out and really walking the streets and riding on our bikes on the streets to understand firsthand what the experiences are, we've been working with our partners in the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, who are actually looking at doing work right now. And so by partnering, and this is just an example, by partnering with, we refer to it as DOTI, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, formerly known as Public Works, as they are looking for ways to build out the bicycle network, we were able to say, hey, this community sees this vision of a connected community through the bicycle infrastructure. So here's their big picture vision for 5, 10, 15 years from now. And our partners in DOTI who are doing work right now, they're like, oh, wow, this is great. We can actually put into our work program this route and this route. So a real practical answer to that question is you all will see work being done on 17th Avenue adjacent to Sloan's Lake, where the city will be sort of looking at revising and updating that bicycle infrastructure to make it more comfortable for bicyclists, as well as for pedestrians trying to get across 17th Avenue to the park and back into the neighborhood. And so because of our ability to inform or validate work that is already underway, that is an example of a recommendation that you'll see come to life really soon. And so that's a long way of saying that our plans inform current work and current projects, whether it's coming out of our agency or other agencies. So that is happening now. And it also becomes that sort of roadmap so that when council has the opportunity to look at their individual work program and the projects that they want to support or advocate for, there's a document that has captured the community's wishes. When we, for example, perhaps receive funding either from the federal government or the state through some of the acts that are underway looking at infrastructure, when we get those opportunities, those funding opportunities, this document will serve as a priority list. So if we get funding, for example, to add new sidewalks, this document will tell us if we and when we get this kind of funding, the community wants us to start in these locations, connecting to schools, connecting to transit, and things like that, maybe major commercial retail areas. And so this is a way for us to understand what your needs and wishes are, and then match that with the work that we do, the funding that we receive, or the funding that we can pursue. Because often when we as a city pursue funding, whether it's at the state or the federal level, we need to demonstrate that there is a desire and a need. And this is where the plans really help us in proving or demonstrating that, yes, this is something, in fact, that a community has asked for. So help us by giving us this grant or this award, and we'll build that connection. We'll build that new park. We'll clean up our South Platte River and make it an amenity for everyone in the city to enjoy. So those are ways that we use our documents. Nothing necessarily happens immediately, but it does serve as a roadmap to help inform decision-making, project priorities, place priorities from the community's perspective, and really helps us in addressing and speaking to your needs.
Thanks, Eugene. That was a great answer. Pause. Any questions from Zoom before I go back to Facebook? All right. So some more, that sort of leads into maybe the flip sort of question or comments that I see on Facebook, which is maybe a little bit of concern actually about having a plan passed. So the idea of these neighborhoods are experiencing a lot of pressure, a lot of gentrification is a process we're seeing throughout the city. There's displacement pressures, there's things happening. And I think I'm hearing some concern about, I guess, increased attention maybe on these areas, or, the plan promising all these nice things, but that spurring maybe displacement, and that these neighborhoods have had already a lot of assets, and instead we're just hearing about all the problems they have and the things that need to be fixed. Those things will get fixed, and the people that have lived here will be displaced. It will be the new people that enjoy them. So maybe you could talk a little bit about, again, now that you've went over a little bit what the plan does and what it doesn't, but maybe what's the, we're very good at, as a city in our documents, at evaluating potential changes and the consequences of potential changes, but we're not so good at evaluating the potential consequences of the status quo in these basically inactivity. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how does it benefit the neighborhood to have a plan versus how might changes continue not having a neighborhood plan? That's a big question. But
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's a challenge, and it's one that we grapple with as a city, and cities really across the nation grapple with, and that often gets discussed in the academic settings as well. Uh, so I hear you, whomever has asked, or the number of you who have asked that type of question. Are we inadvertently stimulating the market by coming in and making our public investments, those that we need to make? We need to make sure that our roads are safe, that our pipes are connected, that our sidewalks are in good states of repair. So we do need to make sure that we are continuing to invest in our people, in our community, and in the needs that we are sort of the stewards of. And sometimes that does sort of shine a light on places for the private market. And so how we want to work to address those situations is looking at programs and ways that we can help individuals stay in place. So for example, an idea, an example of an idea to help a senior stay in their home when there are some important infrastructure needs met in their neighborhood, is maybe we can look at tax deferrals or opportunities to hold off on requiring that property tax into some other future point in time. Or recognizing that maybe an improvement that we make impacts the value of someone's home or their property, and maybe makes it a little bit more challenging for them to stay in their home. So we look for ways to try to predict as best we can what programs, what policies and incentives might be needed to minimize those negative outcomes that aren't intentional. So that's one way that we are wanting to continue to invest in our communities in places that need it and deserve it. West Denver should have trees just like other parts of our city. West Denver should have nice parks and that have the support and love and attention from our policies and our decisions that we get to make, so that we are really taking care of the residents that have been in these neighborhoods. And so we don't feel that the answer to addressing the private market is by not making any investments. We want to work with the private market and the private sector to really look for ways to help promote, and particularly the involuntary displacement, whether that's through trying to help someone with taxes or providing opportunities for grants for home repairs so that a person or a homeowner doesn't feel like their only solution is to sell, but to give them opportunities to connect with resources so that they can fix their roof or replace their furnace. So those are ways that we are working to be creative and understanding what are some of those triggers that result in people leaving their community. It's a challenging one, though, I have to admit. When the private market is at play and we live in a capitalistic society, it can be a challenge, but it is something that we are working to be really sensitive to and try to be creative in thinking of solutions to those situations. So I hope that helps.
Thanks so much, Eugene, for that thoughtful answer. And yeah, it's a big question. That's a tough one. And I hope that answered or responded to the comments for those on Facebook. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really important to discuss. All right, let's see. Any other questions? If there's not so much, we can always end a little bit early. We're just about 10 minutes early. But okay, let's see. Thanks, Bill. How do you go about facilitating or jumpstarting some of these implementation things?
That's
So
a
let's
great
get this
question.
done.
Yeah. Well, one of the ways that we really are moving more towards an implementation model is by working with other agencies. So I mentioned that example of the bikeway improvements on 17th Avenue. So again, we were asking the community where and what corridors were important for us to look at or prioritize. 17th Avenue was one of those corridors that kind of came to the surface, if you will. And then through our partnerships with Dottie, they were able to get that into their work program without waiting necessarily for the plan to become adopted. So those partnerships where I think the city continues to move in a direction of collaboration between agencies is one way that we are looking for those opportunities to get implementation going. Another one, which I mentioned, was with Council President Torres, hearing her community asking for the members of her district, asking for the opportunity to even have the right for an accessory dwelling unit. And so instead of waiting for the plan, Council President Torres and her office moved that forward. Council President or Pro Tem Sandoval has done the same in portions of her district. So those are ways that through dialogue, through connections, through coordination of programs and efforts that we see plans getting implemented, whether it's before adoption, like we've had some examples, or really throughout that process. And once the plan has become adopted, again, it just really serves as that roadmap of community priorities, which really helps us in making decisions related to work programs. Because again, we have a clear roadmap or a recipe of what communities are seeking for themselves. So we are looking to always look for and discover these opportunities for partnership. And it's not only just on the public side, but also with our private sector partners and our nonprofit providers who are doing great work in helping us realize our plans. So it's really all hands on deck, all parts of our community working together to help see plans like the West Area Plan and Blueprint Denver, Vision Zero, our Parks Game Plan. We all have an opportunity to help make these come to life. So I hope that gets at your question, Bill. But yeah, we're not just writing a plan and then sitting it there to see what happens, but we're really trying to encourage those desired outcomes to move forward.
Thanks, Eugene. I think that was a great answer. We got just a follow-up comment, I think, from Bill about encouraging steering committee members and RNO leadership and those who've been especially intimately involved with shaping these recommendations to really take on that assignment and take initiative in jumpstarting some of the implementation. And that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you know what, just speaking to that just for a moment, I think you're absolutely right. Again, it takes all of us in partnership to really encourage or be advocates for certain components, or, you know, again, for those who love our parks and open spaces, when there's an opportunity to weigh in on what priorities could be, or where you all as residents would like to see the city sort of funnel its energy and efforts. Having documents like this is a way for really any citizen to get involved in being a champion for components of a plan that they really celebrate and really value. So we hope that our RNOs and our neighborhood leaders can see the value in having something like this to reflect back to, whether it's 5 years from now or 15 years from now. Hopefully we can get a lot of this done within 15 years. But it is meant to be a tool for really everyone to use and to point back to understand what the vision and aspirations and priorities are.
Yeah, thank you. So in our last couple of minutes, I think I have one final meta question for you. So as I have a planning background, I've read plans. They can be a lot to get through. So this draft plan is, dozens and dozens, maybe potentially hundreds of pages, not 500, but it's long. There's a lot in there. And I know it is so difficult to balance getting everything that's important that you've been hearing from the community and steering committee into the plan, and also making it, on the other hand, digestible. So for the everyday person who maybe this is the first time they're ever engaging, ever looking at a land use and transportation plan, I've heard just some, comments of, I don't have time, I really care about this, but I just don't have time to read through 200 pages, even though people seem to really like the interactive commenting online. That's awesome. The draft plan, you just put the comments in on the website. Do you have guidance, recommendation for someone who does really want to give feedback, may just not have the time? I think there's a lot of us out there, maybe has a couple of things off the top of their head they can really think of that are important to them. So for example, maybe I really care about sidewalk access and I have young kids, so I really care about recommendations about maybe let's say schools and community programs for families, and I really care about housing. So imagine I have those three top concerns or whatever. How would you might recommend someone like me would navigate and find recommendations about those things, or kind of make this a little more digestible if I don't have time to read the whole thing?
And another great question. So in the presentation, I sort of ran through like the title pages of the sections. So in the version that is currently available for review online, and really once we have our documents sort of fully baked and approved, we try to make those hot links for anyone that has a electronic copy. So if you really just care about sidewalks or parks and open spaces or the trails, you can go to those headlines, click on that title, and it'll take you to the section. So that's one way of navigating through the document. Another way, of course, is for those who are used to PDF documents, you can do a word search. That will, of course, bring up every instance of a word or a phrase. So that can still kind of be a lot of clicking to kind of get through to the pieces that you really want to see. But another piece of feedback that we received from the steering committee that's reviewed this current draft that we're really excited to explore is for those of us who are graphic learners. So there are lots of folks that love to read the text and take in the words. But then there's many of us who like to see an image and see how the components of that image are broken down. So we are looking for ways to communicate recommendations and information and ideas and some of the feedback that we've received on what you all would like to see in your future. And so we're looking at creating those graphics with little call out boxes and information that sort of dissect the image that you're looking at so that you can see, okay, here's what we have today, but here's what we might have in the future. And this part is water quality. This part speaks to pedestrian safety. Oh, look, this has a home with a front porch, because we've heard like folks like having front porches in West. So those are ways that we want to diagrammatically communicate recommendations and information. We're also looking at ways to take all the big ideas and maybe simplify them into some sort of graphic or chart so that you can, for those who like that approach, that there's opportunities to absorb information that way as well. So we've got a few ideas on how to make the document a little more navigable and a little bit easier to read and get through. And it's always, a thing to try to make sure that we get everything that we can in without making it too long, so that we do actually have people who can use it as a viable, important resource. So open to ideas and suggestions, but those are some of the ways that we want this document to work for all of you.
Well, thank you so much, Eugene. We are at time, so any last questions for Eugene? He does have his contact information up there. Please feel free to reach out to him. And I want to just say again a huge thank you to Council President Torres for attending Her district does take up the bulk of this area, and so we've been definitely deferring to her guidance, and it's been a long project. In District 1, we also have the Near Northwest plan now going, and oh boy, these plans are long and they're a lot of work, and it's been such a privilege to kind of watch them happen. So thank you again so much to both of you for attending. Thank you to everyone who participated on Facebook Live and over Zoom. And as a reminder, this gets posted to Councilwoman Sandoval's YouTube page, YouTube channel, with all the other Ask a Planners. And please feel free, they're public links. These videos are up there, they're resources for you. So please do share. Thank you so much and have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.